was reading and researching a bit about this manga called The Elder Sister Like One, right? And from what I understand, this manga has quite a troubling and tragic development history. Because the author, Pochigoya, was forced to abandon the manga due to complications with her health, right? And so, to this day, the manga is unfinished, not due to the usual reasons of art block or because the author simply lost passion or various other things that generally prevents the manga from continuing, right? The author legitimately has, to this day, a lot more plans for the story. They want to continue the story, but they simply can't due to their poor health. And this isn't something like, oh, they are in poor health now. This is something more chronic. They just have a poor constitution in general, which prevents them from working for long periods of time. They're always taking breaks and having to go in and out of a hospital because of them. It's not just breaks because, oh, I feel bad today. No, it's legitimately a break because if I don't take it, I might die tomorrow. It's that kind of thing, right? And so a lot of people rightfully consider the way the manga ended tragic because it ended unfinished and the author, according to them, from their own words, they didn't do everything they wanted. They didn't tell all the stories that they wanted. They didn't actually give it the conclusion that they wanted to give it, right? And so it might be controversial to say this, but I think there is enough. Like, before learning about all these circumstances, I actually really liked the way The Elder Sister Like One ended, because it ends on a cliffhanger. It ends obviously on an ending, but it's not an unsatisfying one. They pretty much answer all the questions that, because it's a mystery manga, right? So they answer all the questions that were posed at the beginning. They wrap all the initial mysteries, at least, with a nice little bow. And so the whole thing concludes, again, in quite the open way with a whole, and then they lived happily ever after ending, without again giving a real definitive conclusion to the story, but in a way that is still satisfying, because everything that was a mystery before, everything that they were trying to uncover, everything that they set out to, all the questions that they established at the beginning were answered. And so I was kinda satisfied. No, I feel that the story is already complete enough. It did everything it needed to do, and it ended in a way that was satisfying to me. The characters were left in a way that, again, gave, at least to me, enough closure on their stories. And to be frank, a lot of this has to do with the fact that I at least felt that the story was dragging itself a bit. It was starting to overstay its welcome. A lot of the later chapters of that manga just feel like straight up filler at points, and not even filler that enhances the mystery before, or filler that is at least interesting and that brings in cool questions to the front, analyzing the nature of the being that the manga is named after, this kind of eldritch horror anime girl, right? It straight up just felt like filler. And so, despite the tragic circumstances that led to it, and despite the author's wishes, I legitimately have to wonder if the way The Elder Sister Like One ended isn't better than the fate of one of my favorite anime, which is the Monogatari series, because if you're familiar with Monogatari, you know that the author was actually the opposite of the Elder Sister Like One author. He tried to end Monogatari several times, first in the Hana Monogatari arc in the second season, then in Owari Monogatari, literally the final Monogatari in Japanese, and then with that weird movie where the characters became opposites of their usual selves. It was some real out there sort of fan fiction tier stuff. I really didn't like that movie. So again, as tragic as the circumstances for it were, I sometimes wonder if that kind of ending isn't better than the sort of perpetual state of the story never ending that Monogatari and other stories are in. Because instead of it ending when all of what the story wanted to say or had to say like ended, like with the elder sister like one, or instead of ending when it's finally was starting to wear out its welcome, right? Like in that manga, it seems like because of how popular it is, it's like the producers or the publishers or whoever it may be keep bringing it back, despite how many times the thing has effectively ended. Because I was, as a legit fan of Monogatari, I was ready to accept when Hana Monogatari came out, that was the ending. Right? It felt like a good way to end the story for me. I was satisfied. But then they started doing seasons beyond that, and I was like, okay, fine. If the author wants to continue the story, or if the producers just don't want to give up on their cash cow, that's okay. A couple more interesting stories, which, to be fair, a lot of the stories after Hana Monogatari were legitimately interesting. That's fine, I'll accept that. But when Owari Monogatari ended, I was pretty much done. And that feeling only solidified when I decided foolishly to again watch the movie that takes place after the end of Owari Monogatari, right? The whole fanfiction stuff that has the inverted world and stuff like that. Because after that I was so done with Monogatari, man. And it's not like I began to hate it. I think that everything that was done to it, even the things that I did not like, the whole inverted world stuff, were still pretty good. I legit, to this day, Monogatari is still one of my favorite anime, but I legit refuse to watch anything that was produced after that movie, because to me, that's just dragging the story more. There is nothing more to say. There is no more real story to tell. Squeezing out the cash cow a bit more is understandable and may even be interesting to some extent to fans like me, right? Because obviously I like Monogatari, I like having more of Monogatari, but at what point do you just say, no, we're done. The story needs to end, let's just let it rest and do something else. And so in comparison to that, I feel like the ending, again, as tragic as it was, of the elder sister like one was much better. It said what it needed to say, it told the stories it was supposed to tell, it wrapped all the things that it initially established and gave them cool conclusions with a pretty little bow, and made an ending that, again, while not definitive, was perfectly satisfying, right? And so I have to wonder if that isn't a better ending than just a story being dragged through the mud and forced to continue despite having much nothing else to say just because it's making money. I have to wonder if that fate isn't better than what's happening with Monogatari. In my opinion, actually seems to be on the minority, because when these new seasons were announced, a lot of people didn't have the same attitude that I did. They didn't think that, oh, this is a cash grab, or oh no, the story ended, you need to stop dragging it out and trying to squeeze every last possible bit of story that you can just to gain money. A lot of Monogatari fans were excited for these new seasons. And it's just something that I can't understand, because it's just blatant. They blatantly don't have any more story to tell and they're just doing this as a cheap cash grab. How can you be happy with that? Legitimately, I'm not even criticizing you, I'm just wondering, how do you think this is a good thing? How can you be excited for this? the story should have already ended. Why do you want them to keep dragging it on, making progressively like more pointless additions like that? I legitimately can't understand the logic behind it. I can't understand why anyone would want that. And so I legitimately asking, I want an explanation as to why you're happy about this, because I legit can't understand. I can't understand how anyone can be happy at their supposed favorite series being treated like this. It's legitimately baffling to me, honestly. And so, comparing the fate of these two series, again, I keep emphasizing, as tragic as the unwitting end to the elder sister one was, I have to wonder, comparing again the two, if that isn't a better fate than the story just being dragged on and on unnecessarily just for the sake of corporate greed has happened to Monogatari. I don't know, maybe I'm just taking this way too seriously. Maybe you guys disagree, and if so, please do explain why in the comments. Let's turn this into an actual interesting discussion. And that will be it for today. If you like this video, please do all the normal YouTube stuff. You know, like, comment, subscribe, etc. And I genuinely do hope to see you next time. If you really liked it, I'd also really appreciate if you could support me financially, either through a one-time paid comment donation or by joining my membership, where for $1 a month, you get to participate in exclusive polls in order to decide which videos I'll make next. Like, which of my plans should I focus on? Which of the content I have in mind do you want to see first? You know, that kind of thing. As well as get your name put in this fancy little screen right here. You know, just as a small gesture of appreciation, exactly for your monthly support. But of course, no matter how much you choose to give me, as well as if you choose to give me anything at all, do know that I really appreciate any cent you're willing to throw my way, as well as just the fact that you're watching this video up to this point at all. But with all that stuff out of the way, I think it's finally time to, as always, bid you guys farewell. Obscure Anime out.